Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 10 of Tata Steel 2021. In this video I will show you a full game from start to finish. We're going to look at a very exciting finish of another game, and there is a rectification about a video I made on round 9. Before we get into all that, let's look at the standings after 9 rounds. There were 3 leaders. Alireza Firouzja, Fabiano Caruana and Anish Giri were leading the Tata Steel tournament with 6 points out of 9 games. 2 players half a point behind, Jordan van Foreest and Andrei Yesipenko. Carlsen on his own on +1 and 2 players on 50%, Hare Krishna and Grandelius. 4 players on 3.5, Wojtaszek, Anton Guijarro, Tari and Duda. And Vasilya and Donchenko do not have a great tournament. They are at the bottom of the table with 3 points out of 9 games. The pairings for round 10. Vasilya Donchenko, those 2 bottom players against each other. Duda van Foreest, Hare Krishna, Tari. And these 2 names are difficult to pronounce. Yesipenko against Anton Guijarro. Let's get some help.
Andrei Yevgenievich Yesipenko.
Against
David Anton Guijarro.
Grandelius against Firouzja, Caruana Carlsen, the number 2 in the world against the number 1 in the world, and Giri against Wojtaszek. Let's first look at the game between Yesipenko and Anton Guijarro. Here we see both players at the board. Yesipenko there on the left, and from the back we see Anton Guijarro. Yesipenko opened with the e-pawn, and we got the Spanish opening, the Ruy Lopez on the board. I will go through the opening moves quite quickly, because for a long time the players are maneuvering, finding the best squares for their pieces, and not a lot is happening. Bishop g4, c3, bishop h5, rook e1 and knight a5, attacking the bishop, which is an important piece for white. And the other idea of knight a5 is that black can play up the c-pawn. So white saves the bishop, there goes that c-pawn. h3, black castles, bishop c1 and the knight goes back to c6. Knight bd2, d5 striking in the center, knight f1 and d4. It looked for a moment the position would open up after d5, but now it's closed again after d4. Knight g3, bishop g6. Let's put some more moves on the board. This is a long game, and let's go to the juicy parts of the game. We're on move 21 now. Queen d7, knight h4 and queen d8. This is a maneuvering game if there ever was one. Black's last 3 moves have been queen to d8, to d7, to d6 and back to d8. Both players are trying to find the best setup for their pieces. Black is a little bit better, as he has more space for his maneuvers than white. Knight gf5, the maneuvering continues. Both players are making moves to improve their position before going into action. On the 26th move, c3, c4 was played, and now for the first time something gets taken. B takes c4. The first capture on move 26. Is that a record? Did Grandmaster Hess ask in the live broadcast. No, not even close. There is an official game where the first capture was on move 94. Yepisenko took back on c4, rook b8, g3, knight b4 and bishop b1. This light squared white bishop is not a good piece, but Yesipenko does not want to part with it and brings it to safety. He does not want the knight to take that bishop. Knight c8, knight takes bishop, h takes, take towards the center, knight h4 and queen e6. We have to be careful, we're maneuvering, but if black is attacking that pawn, we have to defend it. So king g2, knight d6, knight f3 and bishop e7. Here a6, a5 is a better move, which Anton Guijarro should have played to avoid the way the game now progresses, where white can push a3 and b4, as we'll see. Yesipenko said after the game that he felt that Anton Guijarro had missed this plan for whites. So bishop e7 was the move from the game. a3 kicking the knight, knight c6 and there comes b4. C takes and c5, kicking that knight away. Knight went to b5 and now Yesipenko recaptured the pawn on b4. Bishop f6. That is not a great move to make on f6. This bishop is not more than a big pawn. And bishop d3 from white. This bishop has suddenly come to life. Knight c3. Yesipenko took the knight, d takes, and bishop c4, attacking the queen. Queen e7. Yesipenko recaptures the pawn, and rook takes b4. The time control was made. This is move 41, and on the 42nd move, bishop d5 was played by Yesipenko. The difference in bishop activity is huge. They are opposite colored bishops, which in the endgame is a big factor in making a position being a draw, but in the middle game the situation is completely different. The bishop will support the c-pawn and is also attacking this weak point on f7. And black's bishop will not be able to help protecting that f7 point because it is of the opposite color. So in the middle game, opposite colored bishops can be a weapon for the attacking side. Knight d4 was Anton Guijarro's move, and Yesipenko wins a pawn. Queen takes a6. After the game he felt that he was winning here. Game goes on. Queen c7. It is not easy. White is a pawn up, but the game is still very complicated. Yesipenko decided to take the knight on d4, a very concrete move. Yesipenko knew that with this trade he would improve the bishop on f6 somewhat, as we'll see, but he still felt that this would be the right thing to do. Rook a1 instead was a suggestion from Grandmaster Hess in the live broadcast, activating that rook. But Yesipenko took on d4. E takes, rook c2, and g5 to stop the f2, f4 push, so that the bishop can go to e5, which is a much better square than f6, and black will not be harassed by the f2, f4 push. Queen back to d3, and the bishop goes to that nice square on e5. Rook a1, activating the rook. Queen e7, rook a6, rook f8 from black. The problem for black is that there's no active plans. He has to stand and hope he can survive this position. c6 from Yesipenko, one step closer to promotion. Rook b to b8, rook c to a2, and rook b to c8. Grandmaster Hess explained the plan for white, and that's quite instructive. White will play rook to a7, and when the black queen moves, he puts that rook on d7. The other rook goes to a7, and the f7 pawn will fall. It all sounds very simple. Simple chess, but as the saying goes, chess is a simple game, but it's very difficult to play simple chess. The game will not go exactly as Grandmaster Hess explained, but this is at least an idea for white. Rook a7 was played, rook c7, rook b7, and you don't really want to take that rook because then the pawn gets only one square away from promotion. So g6 was Anton Guijarro's choice, and now let's look at this move. Queen d3 to d2, that is a move of a grandmaster, a move you and I would never come up with. The threat now is to take on c7, and no matter how black takes back, he loses a pawn. If he recaptures with the queen, then this pawn is lost. And if he recaptures with the bishop, then the pawn on d4 is lost. What a move, queen d2. Black played rook fc8 so that he can take back with the rook if white captures on c7, which he did. Rook takes, and now black's bottom rank is weakened. h4, playing on the other side of the board. Yesipenko is attacking on every side. The idea is here to bring the queen, the white queen, into the attack on the king side. You have to take. If you don't take, you lose the g-pawn, and the queen came to h6. There are threats of rook a8, that's a big threat. Also queen takes g6 is a threat. The f-pawn is pinned, and Anton Guijarro had enough and resigned here. Wonderful play from Yesipenko, who after beating world champion Magnus Carlsen 2 rounds ago, wins again. And this is a very happy Yesipenko after the game. He really has a wonderful smile. After he beat Carlsen in round 8, he was asked what he would do on the rest day, and he said he probably would go to the supermarket And after this game he was asked if that indeed did happen, and he said, yes, I bought some juice and some chocolate. Tomorrow is also a rest day, so the next question was, will you do the same thing tomorrow? He said, yes, I will go to the supermarket again. He's quite a hilarious character, Andrei Yesipenko. And as Grandmaster Robert Hess joked, the supermarket gambit seems to work. I promise you an exciting finish to a game, and that happened in Giri against Wojtaszek. Here we see both players at the board during their game. The opening was a London system, and this is the position after g4, g5 on the 48th move in the endgame. If we look at the position, we see that material is equal. Both players have 2 rooks and a minor piece and 3 pawns each, all on the same file. For a long time this game looked very drawish, but now white has made progress and has winning chances. Here black should play a move like rook f7 and the game goes on. White still has a lot to prove. But in this position Wojtaszek made a mistake. He played bishop b2 and that missed white's shot. If you haven't seen it, and if you want to look for yourself, how does white decide the game on the spot? He did so with, look at this move, rook d7 captures h7. Wow. A rook sacrifice for mate. Because if you take the rook, then there is rook d7 check, and if you go to g8 with the king, then there is h7 check, king h8 only move, and checkmate with the knight. And even nicer, if after rook d7 check you go to h8, then there is first knight g6 check, king g8, and then checkmate with the pawn. Wonderful variations. After rook takes h7, Wojtaszek thought for a while. Of course he saw those mating variations. He knew he could not take the rook. But if he doesn't, he has just lost a very crucial pawn on h7. The g6 pawn is also terribly weak now. So Wojtaszek resigned in this position, which meant Anish Giri took the sole lead in the Tata Steel tournament. Anish Giri's wife, international master Sopiko Guramishvili, was doing commentary in a live broadcast. And this is her reaction in 3 pictures when she saw that rook takes h7 shot from her husband. Quite nice. And this is also quite nice. Radoslav Wojtaszek resigning the game with a smile on his face. These are the results from round 10. Vasyl Agraf beat Donchenko from a lost position. Duda and Van Foreys made a draw, as did Hare Krishna and Tari. We saw Yesipenko against Anton Guijarro. Grandelius Firouzja and Caruana Carlsen were draws. Carlsen blundered a pawn in the opening, but had enough compensation to hold the draw quite comfortably. And we saw Giri beat Wojtaszek. At least we saw the end of that game. That leads to these standings. Anish Giri leads the Tata Steel tournament with 7 points out of 10 games, followed by 3 players, Caruana, Firouzja and Yesipenko. Van Foreys on his own in 5th place with 6 points. Carlsen on 5.5. 2 players on 50%, Hare Krishna and Grandelius. Duda, Vasyl Agraf and Tari have 4 points. Wojtaszek, Anton Guijarro 3.5 and Donchenko in bottom place with 3 points. Thursday the 28th of January will be a rest day, and this is the lineup for round 11 on Friday the 29th of January. We'll see Wojtaszek against Vasyl Agraf. Carlsen Giri, that is a big one. I'm sure Magnus Carlsen will try very hard to stop Anish Giri winning the tournament. They have a very healthy rivalry. Firouzja Caruana, Anton Guijarro Grandelius, Tari, Yesipenko, Van Foreys Hare Krishna and Donchenko against Duda. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. And I told you about the rectification. We have to return to the Wojtaszek Caruana game from round 9. After posting my video on round 9, I checked if there were any comments, as I tend to do, and there was one from Omer Mizrak from Israel. A new name for me, I had not seen him in the comments before. And he wrote, Shalom Rick, there is a mistake in the ending of the game. The 2 H-pawns were exchanged before the sacrifice. Ouch! I checked the Chess Bomb website again, where I usually get the moves from, and Omer was right. I had missed that exchange of the H-pawns. I still don't know how that happened, but it did happen. I feel very bad about that. I want to thank Omer for making me aware, and let me rectify this mistake here and now. In this position, Caruana has just played d6, d5 on move 31. On the next move, g3 was played by Wojtaszek, and here I said that d takes e4 was played by Caruana, but that was wrong. As Omer said, the h-pawns were swapped first, and that makes a bit of a difference. H takes g3, H takes c3, and only now d takes e4. The engine gives g4 as the strongest move, but as said, Caruana took on e4. Here f takes e4 is the best move, but Wojtaszek took the knight, took the piece. Let Caruana find the win after sacrificing that piece. G takes f4 check, the queen gives check to the king, and here king h1 does not save white. Without the h-pawns, the white king does not have any protection from black's pieces. King h1 was a variation I gave in my video, and of course with pawns on h2 and h4 that move makes a lot more sense. In the game, queen g2 was played to shield the check, and e takes f3 from Caruana on move 35, the only winning move. Great play from the American. Wojtaszek took on g6 with check, rook takes check, now king h1 and f2, threatening rook g1 check, followed by the knight maneuver through g4 to e3. Black is winning. Bishop h3 was played to cover the g1 square by Wojtaszek. Knight c4, the killer move, what a beautiful move, opening up the e-file with a tempo on the bishop. The rook can now come in with devastating effect, and in the meantime, the bishop of b2 is hanging. Wojtaszek took the knight, but resigned after rook e1 check. Black has sacrificed both his knights and is totally winning with his rooks and the f-pawn. So this is how the game really finished, and I hope you will accept my apologies for not giving you the accurate moves in the video on round 9. And I hope you enjoyed the video on round 10. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.